Today, we're here talking about the tech-enabled broker-supplier relationship. A lot of suppliers and brokers are doing very unique things to solve these long-standing issues in retail energy. This discussion today is really focused on what are the problems, right? Making sure that we think we know what they are, but we want to hear from you, the audience, and what you think the problems with retail energy is. And then from there, we're going to go into a discussion, a little bit of a deep dive on certain topics. And then we will make sure to answer any questions that you guys have, and we'll all be talking about what each of our companies are doing a little bit to solve these long-term problems in retail energy. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Joe, our esteemed marketing coordinator, to just share some housekeeping items.
Thank you, Jason. Good morning, everybody. My name is Joseph Bonroy, and thank you for attending this webinar today. So today we really want you guys to utilize the Q&A functionality. So upvote comments, comment on other questions, and note that all these comments and upvotes will be visible to everybody else. We also want you to chat with the hosts and panelists. Note that this will only be visible to the panelists. So if you want to ask questions to the panelists, make sure you do. You can follow up with Enerex after the call, and if you have any technical issues at all, please let me know. My email is right here. I'll drop it in the chat as well. Thank you.
Awesome. Really appreciate that, Joe, and excited to kick this off with everybody. So with that, what we're going to start with is just a little heads up. We've had some great support over the last few webinars. This was a series that Enerex started back in COVID to bring the industry together. And as we looked at 2021 and where we're at as an industry going forward, thought weekly might be overwhelming to people still, but monthly webinars. And the next one that we're going to be hosting on September 30th. Is going to be, as far as a mass webinar, is going to be with DNVGL. DNVGL just came out with if you don't know them, they are a very large consultant for retail energy. They just came out with a survey, and they asked us if they could use our webinar series to share some of these results. I think everybody will find a lot of value in that presentation as well. And then if you're a current client of Enerex, we do have an upcoming webinar internally. Customer exclusive series talking about matrix pricing and custom pricing requests and how we're revamping that flow. So for those brokers of ours that are on the call, that you'll be hearing about that shortly if you didn't yesterday. Moving on, TIPA, thank you always. Great relationship that Enerex has with TIPA. Some of you are joining because TIPA told you about this webinar, and we will see you in Chicago on September 23rd. TIPA's next event, if you guys are going to go, guys and gals, y'all, as I like to say, and appreciate TIPA sponsorship of the events that we do. So setting up what we're talking about, right? From a broker perspective, you're a broker on the call. This is what we hear from brokers, the frustration with the speed of the process and data access. Suppliers frustrated with the lack of data from their brokers and this busy work that gets created by data entry. And we really want to make sure that you guys know on this call that we are here to have this discussion be interactive. Chat with us through the Q&A. We will be watching it regularly. There's going to be many polls that pop up on your screen. Make sure to take them. And we'll ebb and flow the presentation to make sure today that we cover any topics that you want us to cover. So with that, I'm going to introduce our panelists today. Starting with Jeff Levin, and we are going to go one by one. Jeff Levin is the CEO of Great American Gas and Electric. I have found him to be an incredibly tech-forward supplier, and that's how he geared himself up to be. So Jeff, brief introduction for yourself. Would love that.
Thank you, Jason, and thanks everyone for joining today. Always excited to talk about technology in our space. I know it's something that we as an organization really embrace. We started Great American Gas and Electric back in 2019 with the 3 different pillars. And one of the core pillars was being able to have a technology-based platform that makes ease of transaction and allows for our channel partners and our customers to be able to get the information they need when they want it and how they need it. And Enerex has been a great partner and trying to further that vision going forward for us. So look very forward to the discussion today in regards to how we can help you help your customers.
Absolutely, Jeff. Thanks so much for that introduction. Again, Benji, Joe's working with him. That's why Joe's off screen, just to make sure he can get on as a panelist. Dear Zoom calls. Thank you, Joe. Appreciate you, man. We'll skip Benji for a second and go to a friend. Well, Benji's here. Hey, Benji's here. Woo! My man. Hey, good to have you. Appreciate it. Glad we got that worked out. So Benji Coomer, VP and business partner in Broker Online Exchange. If you don't know Box, I would be incredibly surprised at this point. They're one of the preeminent agent and broker platforms in the country. And Benji and I have been colleagues for a while here. Would love you to give a brief introduction of yourself, man.
Hey, how's it going? I'm Benji. Like you said, Jason, with Broker Online Exchange. We are I refer to ourselves as a master broker in the space. And, part of this panel is that, we value technology in the space and we want to try to streamline the interactions between brokers and suppliers. But we kind of bring a whole host of back office support. And, the main thing is really connecting those brokers to suppliers in a, quick, efficient, and the best way possible.
Absolutely, Benji. Thanks again for joining us on this call. And last but certainly not least, I call him a friend as well. I can say that publicly, man. We've known each other for quite a long time, and Brandon has come up in the organization of Constellation, been there over a decade, and has championed many of the internal projects that's making Constellation a more technologically savvy supplier as time is going on. So Brandon, please, quick introduction for yourself as well.
Yeah, appreciate it, Jason. So Brandon Horton, Director of Sales and Sales Operations for our mass markets business. Been with Constellation for 14 years. Started way back when on the commercial and industrial side as an inside sales rep, transitioned into a BDM role. And then in 2010, when we branched into the mass market space, I was one of the first employees to go help build that business. And I've been kind of growing within that space ever since. And Constellation, we've been on this journey. I look back at, been through a lot of mergers, acquisitions, system consolidation, and we're really excited now to have a lot of that kind of behind us. And it's enabled us now to really focus on the digital aspect and delivering more effortless experiences to, partners, customers alike. And we've got a lot of exciting things that I'm sure we'll get into and share here today.
You got it, man. Absolutely. Brandon, thanks, panelists. Really appreciate this. I'll take one brief moment to mention the three of us, the four of us especially, we know that this is a panelist of all white males. And I will tell you that I've had a conversation with all four of us, and we all support diversity and inclusion in this industry. And it just so happened that this panel is like this. But it's important that we call this out. And I want to engage with more people within this industry to be on these panels, because diversity is a big thing for Enerex. If you look at our management staff, as we like to say, you got Depinder. What happens when an Indian, a Protestant, and a Jew create a company? Oh, it's Enerex, right? We like to say that often because it's so true. Diversity creates so many more ideas. So those who want to be panelists, you want to have a voice within our industry, we're going to support you fully here. So just wanted to do a brief call out for that. I know my panelists. Yes, please.
Just before you head over, I do want to add that Great American Gas and Electric is very strong advocate of that as well. We actually are a minority-owned business as well, and we are a women minority-owned business. So those two pieces from the diversity side are extremely important to us as well. And if you have customers that need that WIMBY designation or the MD designation, Great American Gas is fully certified and is a minority-owned business as well.
Appreciate that, man. Really do. Benji, Brandon, anything to share there? I know you guys fully support this. We've had many conversations about this offline, but anything to add?
No, absolutely. I think, Jason, you nailed it. Jason, I've had these conversations in the past, but we're all about the diversity. It's kind of funny. We kind of have the Protestant Jewish thing over on as well. So, I echo those sentiments.
Yeah, agreed. It's a core value of ours. I think you guys all covered it very well.
Thank you, Brandon. Really appreciate that. All right, so kicking it off, we don't really this is not an infomercial, but we just wanted to tell you why we're here today at Enerex. Why are we doing this? Is this a public promotion? No, it's because it really speaks to our core values, and especially our mission statement, connecting people through technology to increase trust in retail energy markets. We are only here to build trust in retail energy. It's what we think doesn't exist in our industry, between brokers and suppliers and the end use customer for that matter, right? Let's not forget about them. They're the ones that we sell to every single day. Enerex is only focused on retail energy markets, so every one of these webinar series is going to be around specifically retail energy and the connection of those pieces. Our product suite is Sparkplug Brokers, main product, Propeller, main product for suppliers. Exchange connects the world together. We have broker portals as a service. We have online digital enrollment channels. We have Craft as a commission statement generation tool. We're introducing EnerChat. So think about if you guys were able to all communicate as an industry through a chat functionality that is coming this year. And then insights and compliance and data, just kind of sharing with you what it is Enerex does here as a platform. But what we're here to talk about today specifically is how to increase trust in retail energy markets and how people are doing that through technology. So let's take a brief second. Everybody in the audience, what I want to gear up for you guys, because there's going to be, again, as I mentioned, as you guys came on, a lot of different polls that we're going to ask you. So I want you to really take a second to think about the operational process. And what in the operational process has really pained you within our industry today. And even those brokers that are on Sparkplug, or even those folks that Benji has invited that use the Box platform, we've helped, right? It's been a little bit more automated, but there's still so much more we can do. So take a second to think about that and what it is we can do. And as I get this first poll kicked off here, what we wanted to talk about here is what are those problems that you see within retail energy? Zoom only allows for 10 spaces. So we put 10 things in there. And if anything on this list is so painful for you, but you don't think it falls into any of these categories, please chat. Put it in the chat. We will speak to it. But please start answering this poll question that just should have popped up on your screen, which has to do with this complex, incredibly non-automated process that is the customer energy journey within retail energy, right? This is what we all know, right? LOAs and historical usage, and then the suppliers grabbing credit and contract generation and submission of contracts. Look at all this Excel and PDF and email that occurs within this industry. Then let alone, wait a minute, now I got to serve the customer. And this is also incredibly important. You'll see some of these on the poll question that we just asked. But there's pre-deal information and data, and then there's post-deal information and data. Specifically, how you get paid as a broker, right? That is all through the API transaction that the supplier is getting. We do believe there are great solutions on the right side of this, but with all this email and Excel, what are people doing to help this sales process? And so that's really what we're going to start drilling into today, is how to make this process a little bit better. So polls are still coming in. What I am going to do, and I will share these polls with everybody, but I'm going to get started on the conversation here with speaking through a couple of these. And if anything, again, pops up that we're not going to cover, we will cover it. So I'm going to kick this off with the speed to quote and close, which we know is a big problem within retail energy. In this slide, we're really trying to make sure that we gear up the problems, and then we'll tell you later what we're doing to solve them. But we're going to talk about why they're a problem today. So Jeff, would you help us with that first one, speed to quote to close, and describing your experience within this in the industry, both good and bad?
Sure, thank you, Jason. So this is, I've been in the retail energy space now for over 20 years. And one of the big challenges that we hear from our customers and our channel partners is that there's a lot of competition in the marketplace out there, and they want to be able to get the best price the quickest to their customer so that they can be in a position to be able to close the deals more rapidly and not lose out to somebody else who's been able to get the price to them faster. The big piece is getting all that information over to the retailers, being able to then get the pricing back from the retailers in a consistent format and a consistent time frame, and be able to compare apples to apples. In a dynamic moving market where every day and every hour the price starts to change, if you have one price come in on one day and another price come in 3 days later, you then have to go back and get a refresh for the first price or the second price, and getting them all together at the same time and hoping that somebody doesn't come in to their customer at the same time you're working with the customer and give him a different price that is on the third, fourth day when you're trying to compile all your pricing back together. So once you figure out how to get the prices to and all the prices back, the issue still comes into how do you enter that data into their systems? How do you get the price? Do you have to send separate emails out to different people? Do you have to type in the account numbers, which in some utilities are 20 digits long, other ones are pod IDs, other one needs service meters. There's all sorts of complexity associated with just getting the information in the first place, and partners can fat finger something, they can make it so they miss a digit, and all of a sudden that slows down the entire process as well. So the big problem that we see is getting the requests from the customer to the channel partner to the ESCO so that he can actually bring the information back to you in a timely and easy fashion that's going to meet the customer's needs.
Awesome. I mean, and Jeff, I remember back when I started in this industry with 06, Brandon, we'd talk about this all day, right? Oh, matrices. Well, that was the big thing. We'll solve this by giving a matrix. And this way you can just go on in the street and sign up a customer on the spot, right? That was the solution, Jeff, there. Why is matrix pricing not really working for our industry?
So,
Yeah.
are you asking Brandon?
Yeah, please. No, I'll go with Jeff first on this, and then we'll circle back with Brandon on this with the next piece, because it'll talk about broker portals, which was the next evolution, right, of trying to get. But why does matrix not work specifically with this idea of it not being the best price to the customer? Why is that not the best price for the customer?
So one of the big pieces about matrix pricing as a whole, one of the reasons why Great American Gas and Electric went away from not using matrix style pricing was because it's not really fair to the customer. And we're all about trying to get the best price and the best product to the customer in the fastest amount of time from an ease of transaction perspective. And as everybody on this call knows, load factors are set up on a matrix style price based off of a standard profile. So if the customer has a profile that is actually above from a load factor perspective than the standard matrix, he's not going to be getting as good a price as if you were to custom price it. And part of the challenge with the matrix world is that pricing a whole bunch of customers, regardless of the size, becomes very difficult for most retailers because it bogs down their system. So when you have a high load factor customer, you're actually not being able to get him the best price available in the marketplace simply because he's being priced off of a standard profile. And then the same thing occurs on the bottom end. If his load factor is below what the matrix thresholds are from a load factor perspective, you can't contract him. He'll actually get kicked out and say his load factor is too low. And now as a channel partner, you're going to have to go back to that customer again and either increase his price or get him re-signed if you can find somebody to actually custom price him to give you a real price. So it really becomes a very complicated process that works for a part of it, but doesn't encompass the entire portfolio of customers in the small commercial market space.
And we'll go deeper into this with the next slide. The biggest problem I think we all feel is data access. And, as I kick to this next topic, which is info on accounts under contract, I'm going to share the results of the poll here so everybody in the audience can see this. What you'll see is that it is all over the board, but there are a few clear winners when we talk about speed to quote, right? Data access. We just talked about not getting the best price for the customer. And then we're really going to deep dive into this EDI, which definitely seems to be top three, actually, of the pieces. And it does go into speed to quote to close a decent amount. So we'll jump into data access and why that's such an issue. Because honestly, with the load factors, I think most brokers out there, if they don't have a tool, they're not getting that information, right? And why? But info on accounts under contract, definitely one of the top three as well. And Brandon, why is that? How have people tried to solve this thus far? And why is that still an issue within retail energy?
Yeah, I think it's still an issue because, to effectively run the business, partners need information about account status and, their portfolio of customers and the consumption of the underlying customers and expected revenues, right? So they can run their business. And I think suppliers have tried to solve for this through building portals, right? Ourselves included. And so you can log into the portal, and we've been building out more robust features and capabilities within that in the portal. You jump it over to the right? Why is it not working? Well, there's many portals that are out there. Speaking from Constellation's perspective, we've been on kind of a journey to stand up an infrastructure that allows us to meet the customers and partners where they want us to be, right? And that could be in our own portal. We recognize there's a broad spectrum of the wants and needs across the industry here. And we've been kind of on this journey to start building up the capabilities to enable that and meeting these, partners, where they want to be. And that could be in our portal, that could be a direct integration with our systems, getting access to data, being able to do transactions. And it could also be on a partner platform.
Absolutely. And that's such a good way of, how we're trying to solve the problems and what we're trying to do. But that whole idea of this, what we call portal mania, right? Everybody's trying to say, oh no, you come in my portal, you come in this portal, et cetera. That's a problem for the channel managers who try to help you as the broker, and that's a problem for the brokers where the suppliers are saying, no, you got to come to me, right? So there are some unique things that suppliers are doing, which we'll talk more about. Lost deal information, Benji, I remember when I was in the supplier world and I was head of marketing and analytics for Source, I pushed so hard on my channel, the channel managers, they didn't even report to me, but that indirectly, right, throughout the organization, we're working with our broker partners and said, we need this data. We need to understand. So I'm curious from your perspective, it was in the middle of the problems identified by our panelists, our attendees today. But from your perspective, how does it work when these suppliers are asking you for data? And is that a big problem for you, a broker, to be feeding that information back? Is it a lot of time that you spend on that?
So, we've taken I tell the joke a lot that when I was on the supplier side that you would hear this feedback all the time from brokers of, oh, you were in second place. And it's like, this is getting odd that I'm always not winning and I'm in second place. And it's like, you're just there, but you're not getting the deal, right? So, Arthur and I, when we both grew up on the supplier side of the business. And when, that was one of the things we wanted to give all of our suppliers great feedback, right? To say, hey, we are truly partnering with our suppliers. We want to have that link between our suppliers saying, hey, we're not just using you as a data source or as a pricing source, so to speak. We're actually using you to give you good, honest feedback, give you, the reality of where the situations are, or this customer, chose this supplier because of X, right? Because of contract language, or, hey, this was a straight race to the bottom. And I know suppliers hate hearing that, but any broker, if they're being honest with you, they're saying, hey, price is the number one thing that a customer is going to choose from. And at the end of the day, it always comes across as bad as, oh, we're becoming commoditized and we're becoming that. And it's like, well, that is the reality at the end of the day, that there is, customers need competitive rates. They need competitive contractual language. And, to Jeff's point, they need it quick. And a lot of times that wins the race for suppliers too, is if you can get the price out first and it's competitive, then you're going to win that bid a lot of times, right? But what we, one of the things that we did on behalf is that we consolidate a lot of information. We have a lot of prices that come through Box. We have a lot of suppliers. We have a lot of brokers that are using our platform. And, especially on custom rates, well, I should say specifically on custom rates, we give, especially on the suppliers that'll come back and say, hey, how did we look on that fee? And we'll just show them, we'll give them a ranking of, hey, we priced 6 suppliers. You came in number 4, and supplier A, B, C, we don't give names, but we say, here's the rates and here's where you came in at. And
Absolutely.
back to them so that they can see visually and give them that idea of saying, hey, here is where you are falling, in the ranking. And if you need more information, or if you lost because of contractual language or things like that, we want to share that information.
Yeah, Benji, I think that's so cool, which is that, I think for all the brokers that are on the phone that don't have any type of technology in a platform, and whether you want to go with a master broker like Box, or whether you want to have a software like Enerex or any of the other softwares that are out there, those softwares really they're working with suppliers too, right? All those softwares, right? Maybe not directly as a sleever, but indirectly through a vendor, right? As an information partner. And so I think it's so important to find those ways to automate, but for those that don't have it, right, don't have technology, they're just getting email requests. I remember my channel managers were sending out, hey, what's the status of this opportunity? What's the status of this opportunity? And that just becomes, again, a time suck, both for the channel manager, because the data's not coming, the feedback's not coming back to them automated, right? So I know we're doing a lot to solve this, but I still see this still as a problem. And speaking to the next one, Benji, how much of a problem do you feel like the suppliers paying you accurately becomes, right? Do you feel like, I've heard a lot on panels that we talk about, well, no, why don't we just tell all the suppliers that they all have to have a standard TIPA, right? TIPA is going to come and tell all the suppliers you have to have this standardized commission format. Brandon, Jeff, and we know that that is not achievable, right? Like, no, we built our systems around delivering the information in a certain way. So curious, what are your thoughts to that, Benji, and how that, how that plays out with accurate commissions that get sent to Box?
It's a great question. For the most part, a I mean, we have a full commissions team, right? And I mean, I think that right there gives you the indication of why we have a full commissions
You built
team.
the whole FTE set of people around making sure it was accurate, right?
We've got, I think four employees dedicated to that issue right there, right? And it is literally sifting through, and I would lump drops in with this as well, like drops / commissions, right? Is, you know, a real-time data of saying, hey, where do we get this? You know, how do we easily transmit this information back and forth, saying, hey, here's the commissions, they're accurate, all the account numbers are accounted for. I mean, it's a very difficult process, right? And we've put some, you know, we've put some technology behind it to, you know, sift through those things. And, you know, that's kind of one of the offerings that we tell our brokers is that, hey, we consolidate those commissions down for you. And we look for the errors and we look for the missing data and the missing reads and things like that. But, you know, it has been and continues to be a big problem. And
yeah, I mean, I think that's so telling, like what you said, a broker, a master broker, right? Somebody with significant resources and a lot of people operating on their platform is spending 4x FTE money on this problem, you know? And from a supplier's perspective, becomes difficult to manage this many partners too. We work with suppliers, right, to try to help solve this issue, but bad data is bad data. And some of this is what's coming in from EDI transactions, right? This is what the next slide's about, to talk about the utility side. But before we get there, you know, we just went through this whole slide, Brandon, on the last one, right? Just going back, and man, is this a crazy complicated process. And from the supplier perspective, you got all these hundreds of mass market partners. How does this affect you, the supplier, when these people are sending you these custom price quotes that aren't going through Matrix? Describe what the process is and why this is, you know, such an issue for retail energy right now.
Yeah, I mean, it is a huge challenge, right? Because there's an expectation of, you know, expediency, and for the reason that Jeff called out up front is, you know, to get in front of those customers and close those transactions, you know, quickly, you know. But for us, in the current state, it's looked a lot like emails and Excel files and, you know, manual data entry into the systems, generating prices, tracking down, you know, usage data discrepancies, getting a price, distributing that back out to the partners. And then the partners still have their part, which is getting a hold of the customer and then kind of executing the deal. And so, you know, we've been really focused on how do we solve that and create more kind of self-service in this space. And, you know, we've been kind of creating building an infrastructure and an API kind of integration capability that we believe is going to bring these self-service capabilities where the partners want to engage with us. And that could be in portal solutions, that could be in a platform type solution, or that could be hooking in with us directly, you know. But for, you know, the mass market, small commercial, and even residential, we're doing it, you know, type transactions, you know, you can have a integration solution where you can make a price request, send the customer data along, get the price response back, inclusive of both matrix and custom pricing, right? And then be able to execute that deal and send it over. And for us internally, you know, it's going to allow for us to free up those resources to focus on other more value add things to support the broker partners, as opposed to doing the data entry. The brokers, right, we expect it to, again, just be a more rapid response that they can get the pricing that they need to make the decision and get back in front of the customer.
Speed to quote, yeah.
Exactly.
Absolutely, and that'll affect the speed to quote. You know, I think this idea of system-to-system communication, everyone uses this magic word APIs. Now, we might know what that is because we live it, breathe it every single day, but I think the general public just thinks of that as like, oh, it's that IT term that I hear. So to break it down for our audience, you know, APIs, just think of it like this. It's system-to-system communication. System A sends information, system B actually has to have code, right? A program to catch, to receive that information, right, from system A. And then they send what's called a payload, right, back of information back to system A. And so this is something that will revolutionize the industry because it is the next evolution of sending information via email and manually entering this in. Benji, I don't know how you do it, but I know brokers on Sparkplug, When they send a custom quote out, they try to flip it on the supplier and say, hey, I need you to enter pricing into my portal because that's going to help me now, right, get 10, and I don't have to redo the data entry. You see what I'm saying? It's data entry. If a broker is sending the information to the supplier has to do data entry. If the supplier is putting prices into a portal, right, or sending it back via email, now the broker is forced to do data entry. Why? That doesn't have to happen with today's technology. And I will tell you flat out, other industries, if you look at commercial insurance, if the travel industry, of how Sabre came to be, it's not how other industries operate. So I'm quite confident that there's solutions to this problem, but I do see this as one of the biggest issues. And we'll wrap this up, Jeff, so we can move on to EDI with drops. Now we're in the post-deal process. You got to sign deal, right? This drop re-enrollment process becomes such a problem, both for suppliers and brokers. Tell us a little bit about what those current industry solutions to that problem are and why that's really not a long-term solution for the industry.
So, I mean, this is a really, really big piece. And it falls back to what Benji was talking about earlier regarding commissions. I mean, we're all in this industry because we are looking to make fees based off of the sales that we're making. And one of the big issues that goes on with you don't get fees if a customer drops, if you have an enrollment that doesn't get enrolled, and all of the information that goes into after the sale, you've done all the hard work, you finally got to that customer, which is difficult in the first place, you send it to the retailer to get enrolled, and all of a sudden you get 3 of the accounts have a customer account is blocked, you get it, there are other 5 that are actually enrolled, and then somebody slams them the very next day because the retailer that had the account puts back in an enrollment request. And the poor broker or the channel partner that's trying to figure all this out doesn't get the information until they've already too late and they've passed the enrollment window. And all of a sudden now they've missed a month of fees going forward if they get the customer back at all, because sometimes the data is so slow moving back and forth that they don't see it until they get a commission report, which could be up to 90 to 120 days later after they've actually signed the contract. So they could already have missed 4 months worth of enrollments going on with the customer themselves. So at Gage, we actually said, we want timeliness of information. When something happens, we want our partners to know. And we do that through all automation. Everything that we do is ease of transaction, ease of information flow. We have an automated system that our channel partners are set up in our system. If a rejected account comes in, if a drop account comes in, if there is, for some reason, a delayed enrollment, you will see all of that immediately. On our portal, we have account status and contract status so that every account has a status associated with it. So if you're in the HU state or if you're in the enrollment state, you can see the status and you'll get electronic notifications that'll come out to a designated email address that you want it to go to. So if there's different groups inside of Box that handle drops and rejections than there is that handle pricing, we have made it so that you can actually determine who you want it to go through so it can get dealt with in a timely fashion and you're not losing commissions, we're not missing enrollments, and the entire process starts to go smoothly and seamlessly, and the customer gets what they've signed up for and gets what they paid for.
You know, Jeff, you touched on a couple of points here, which is, yes, that's going to erode trust with the end use customer. And I do believe that's the biggest challenge out of that, piece of the missing information and the lack of, speed of that information getting to folks. But just to make sure all the brokers are aware, realize that suppliers get this information via a pseudo API called EDI, right, from the utility. Now, I would challenge everyone. I think emails are great. Sure, it's a first step in the evolution, but would it be possible to automate that drop re-enrollment process even further by, if the supplier is sending that transaction and it goes right into the CRM that broker is using, and it triggers a notification that, hey, and by the way, most of these utilities, you'll have 7 days or so to cure that drop by a re-enrollment process, but why not just actually kick off a ticket, a process within a system that can be tracked and managed versus an email that might just go into la la land, right? So I always force this, you should probably even think about further automating it, right? I know you do, Jeff, by the way, right? You're just saying that email is an option, but I'm challenging our audience to think beyond email communication and system to system communication as a whole.
And Jason, I think it's a great point, and you're right. We do all of that. And I think part of the problem that's in the industry right now is the industry is just catching up. And if it's between a Box or an Enerex that are starting to get the technology there, it's unfortunately not as simple as saying just put an API in place. There's a lot of complexity associated with making this happen. And we're a little bit at the front end of the piece because we've got all our APIs and everything we've designed. And unlike Constellation, we haven't been around and had multiple systems put into place. We started from ground zero with the same vision and the same platform. So it's been a little easier for us to be able to do that. And all of the other large retailers will get there. It's just the complexity associated with doing it is very complicated. So when we talk about it, it's not only on our side that the complication is there, but it's integrating it into our partners as well, which makes it even further complicated. And everybody's got their own systems. And because you have your own systems, it becomes even further complicated because everybody's writing their own separate APIs. They've got to do their endpoints that have to be set up. So we're ready and willing to work with providers to be able to do that because we feel we have some very cutting edge technology. But if I think about it, when you look at banks or you look at Amazon or you look at some of the large big box locations now that have gone all digital, 5 years ago, if somebody said to me, you're going to buy all your books off of Amazon, I would have said, no, I like going to the bookstore to buy a book. I never do it anymore. If 10 years ago somebody said to me, you're never going to go into a bank, you're going to do everything online, I would have said, no way am I going to do that. But I never go into a bank anymore. I do everything online. And I think the energy industry, which is very predominantly pen and paper, scan, email, fax, send back and forth and do all of that, is going to evolve exactly the same way that the airlines, telecom, banking, and the big box and retail sectors have gone. And it's now just a matter of getting everybody up to speed and understanding what's the easiest way to make it happen. And we think that we've got solutions, but we're going to talk a little more about that in a moment.
Yeah, friendly reminder to everybody in the industry here. We're only 20 years old in Texas, right? And we're 10 years in the East Coast. Think about, by the way, how were you when you were 10 years old or a teenager, right? How did you view the world? How many mistakes did you make? It's okay of where we're at, but I will tell you, this technology revolution, not only is it coming, and you'll hear what the four firms on this call are doing to help this, but I think COVID rapidly kickfired that too. Would you guys agree with that as panelists? Like COVID really kind of like ramped up that like, oh wow, we got to do this.
Absolutely, yeah.
Please go ahead and touch on that point.
Yeah, I just think from distributed workforce to the way that even partners had to now start kind of navigating and where their sales force is operating out of, right? You had to kind of evolve and kind of on the fly come up with different tools and processes to support those. And digital was key, right? Unfortunately, we were on the forefront of some of that with some of the API integrations and solutions that we had. We still have a lot of work to do, and there's a lot more to come.
It's awesome, man. As we kind of dive into this with the EDI-HU side, it's a nice transition, and I've asked to launch the next poll here because from the audience, what we're really looking for is like, how much of a problem is this for you, and how much do you know about this? In entirety of what you can have as a broker, or as, again, when I say a broker, anybody who sells end use electricity. It might be a direct sales force within a retailer, right? But that first question, Joe, if you can pop that poll open, is this important, right, to the people who are selling electricity? The next poll, looks like the same poll, Joe. Just check that out real quick. But anyway, that's the poll that's going to come up there. And as we talk about this, it's this EDI is how it's the same word for an API, although it's a little bit more archaic of a system. And it's not where a system A and then system B automatically responds. It's that it sits in a queue. And then most of the utilities will actually go in, verify, click a button, and then push the information back, which is why in some places like JCP&L in Jersey, it takes 3 days for a retailer to get a usage back. So, I'll go roundtable here. We'll start with Jeff and then go to Brandon and Benji, but like, how do you see the problems with EDI-HU? What do you think it would be used for by an end use broker, right? And what do we have to do as an industry to really get people to come together and realize we got to serve the end use customer better, right? We have to, right? That's the key to all this.
Right. So, I mean, depending on what market you're in, it can be as short as instantaneous, where you're in a web scrape market, you can get HU data back immediately, or it could be, to your point, in some markets up to 3 to 4 days to be able to come back. But from an end use perspective, from a salesperson going out and trying to help the customer get the best price that's out there, especially when you now start talking about the COVID factor that was in place. Traditionally, our industry has always been designed around that you take the historical usage and the historical cap tags or trans tags and use that to forward price. Well, what's happening now is that the historical usage of the customer over the last 12 months may not necessarily be representative of what's happening in the forward marketplace. So you get situations where they may have a tag that's incorrect because it's too low, or a tag that maybe they're too high, and usage that is lower than or higher than what it should be. So by being able to see that information and being able to say, hey, you know, maybe this isn't the right time for you to be able to do a cap and trans locked in product. Maybe you want to pass that through to be able to take advantage of your increased volume and your lower tag values, as opposed to trying to fix that in and maybe working with a number that isn't indicative of what's going to be going forward. It may be that they had some bad volumes in the past and they want to be able to work with the retailer and say, hey, here's what the new forward volume is going to look like. Here's what it was prior to it. Maybe you should adjust so we can get the right price to the customer. So there's a lot of things that historical usage can help them be able to make value-added discussions with the customer to be able to allow them to get the best price on a go-forward basis.
Absolutely. And, you know, Benji, from a perspective of how a broker kind of uses that data and what your platform, you know, does, screen scraping, obviously, right? And the utilities that have it, quickest, fastest way. I think we as an industry need to go to these utilities that don't have those capabilities and tell them about this. Hey, look at what Pico does. ComEd, by far, by the way, the best example that we have as an industry. Instantaneous, and it can be interval usage, ordered through an Excel file on top of summary data. But as I pass this over for the audience, just to kind of make sure that everyone's aware, there's really three key pieces, right, of the data. There is your usage, right, which is your interval data, 15-minute, how you use power, but it's how that relates to peak usages. And the peak usages really fall into two categories, which I think is one of the most important concepts for brokers to understand, which is that there's your peak demand, right, your barometer each month of what's your peak of using for that month. But then there's these things called cap tags for capacity values and transmission tags or NSPL as folks call it as well, right? Those effectuate the price because those peaks, because they're measured differently in different times than your peak on a monthly basis, can greatly affect how the price of power is calculated. In some markets, capacity is 30% of the overall consumer spend in terms of a price. So this is really important data to understand. And, you know, Benji, what are your thoughts on that and how Box uses that data, as well as what you think the industry needs to do with this data going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think you nailed it. A lot of the automation in the industry, you know, in general, right, is held up a little bit on the utility side, right? But the problem is they're just not very incentivized. Some of these utilities, what's their incentive to spend, you know, millions of dollars to create automation for, like, hey, we've done this like this for for decades. Well, why do we need to do it different, right? So there needs to be something, I think, on the retail side, on the supplier side of the business, you know, some sort of, you know, merging of the minds, so to speak, to create this, right? And that's probably more on a political level or somewhere there. But, you know, as far as Box's role in this, you know, we take that data and we put this back to customers and show them, you know, different charts and different things of, you know, how it affects their usage, how that, like you were saying, how that affects their pricing and what kind of products we can present them to, you know, mitigate some of the risk that they have with their usages, right? So we use these, you know, these data all the time for end customers, right? And we present that through to our brokers, saying, hey, these are things you can use to, you know, mine information for the customer, right? But I you know, the biggest issue, I think, is that total total automation from the utility to the supplier to the broker to the customer. You know, there's these gaps in there, and that's what's, I think, holding the whole industry back from saying, hey, let's automate all of it, you know? And you mentioned it earlier, but, you know, on the supplier side of the business, especially older, more, you know, more established suppliers, I think in their mind, it's a little of the chicken or the egg. You know, they're like, yeah, we've got the Enerexes of the world and we've got the boxes of the world, but we have 400 brokers that don't need that, right? So we're just going to keep pricing this certain way. And, you know, that kind of, thinking, I think is inhibiting the, you know, the ability for the industry in general to move forward and to say, hey, we have very fast pricing. You know,
and Benji, I can't agree with you more. And I think even to build on what you've said is that to give you, because we have the data now and the data is available, a lot of times you'll get a combined quote where you'll have 10 buildings in one property owner, and one of the or two of the buildings will have very, very low load factors, and the rest of the buildings will have good load factors. And you can now use the data if you had it and say, hey, if I take these two buildings out, I can now change your price by X mils. And all of a sudden the property owner will say, oh, okay, I don't want to be subsidizing all the rest of my buildings because of those two. We can now bifurcate the contract into two different contracts, and information now becomes power. And you're now going out and all of this,
right? You know, the buildings that you're going to have to work on as an end use facilities manager with this data, right?
Correct. And maybe you could do peak shaving, or you could do other things with those buildings and work with them later on. But now you truly get the consultative approach. And all of a sudden, instead of just being in the run of the mill, everybody giving you a price on these 10 accounts, you're actually differentiating yourself, and you're not now fighting over pennies anymore. You now can come in and give them a value added product at a lower price without the same competition, because you have the information that allows you to make that business decision for your customers.
So true. I'm going to pass this off to Brandon, but you know, so from an industry perspective, it starts with the brokers, right? Knowing what this is used for, knowing how to pitch it to their end use customers, and knowing what the power of this data is. That's first and foremost, right? The second piece is then making sure, right, that the utilities understand that part of the problem in building trust with the end use customer is the access to this data. For any of the people on this phone in New England, I feel for you, man. This is the worst utility sets, right? When it comes to sharing data, is the New England territories, the masses of the world, et cetera. So that's where it starts, in informing the utilities, but realize, like Jeff said, or Benji, somebody said about the millions of dollars spent, what's their incentive? They don't, right? They don't have that incentive. But I think the incentive could be, at the end of the day, a better retail energy industry, right? And I also think that the biggest thing that the utilities sit on, by the way, sharing the results here of this poll that we just ran. Thank you for everybody who's participating. It is important to the brokers that are on this call. They know what to do with it, it seems. So great. My next question, while I pass this over to Brandon for the audience, and Joe launch our second poll on this slide, is the utilities are telling our industry, when we go to them, when we talk to them about this stuff, that wait a minute, this is proprietary data. The end users of electricity do not want you to have this data. Now, listen, I don't want my information, credit cards, et cetera, to be publicized. Sure, that's PII. But my usage data for my home, Jason Beck specifically, freaking no. And hey, if Alexa can tell me that you need to replace your refrigerator because that is the signal that I'm getting is you have a really bad refrigerator, please do it. Now, I'm curious what the audience thinks of how proprietary is this data to your end use customers. So Joe's going to be launching the next slide, the next poll here. I think actually, yeah, the next poll here, Joe, and we'll get the audience. But Brandon, bring us home on this EDIHU piece.
Yeah, I think what I'll refer to as the traditional energy landscape, we hit on a lot of the key components. And even in the poll, you saw it's like, hey, these data elements can help me better inform product selection for customers. It can help educate them on how maybe they can change their consumption patterns to yield better costs going forward, right? And ultimately kind of lower, their energy consumption and expenses potentially. I'll actually take a different angle and saying, as you look forward where the industry is going, right, and the innovation of where we're at, I mean, we're on the verge of massive change of dynamics and fundamentals of the energy industry. When you think about electric vehicles, you think about distributed energy, you think about storage and where all those technologies are at, right? And at the same time, that's on the backdrop of customers wanting to take a more proactive role in, managing their energy and spend. They want the transparency. They want to understand what solutions they have at their fingertips. and many of them have sustainability goals. And if they don't now, then they likely will into the future, if not out of kind of, their preference, then maybe out of necessity, because larger corporations that maybe they're supplying and partnering with are going to require it, right? So from an innovation standpoint, the access to this data is got to be more freely available. And I think that's Benji talked about, we need suppliers to advocate. And I'd say Constellation is absolutely doing that. And I'll point to, before the pandemic last year, we did a roadshow and hit 8 different PSCs and PUCs talking about, this is one of the key components and what we were intending to do with it in terms of innovation and products and access to customers and empowerment and what it would enable them to do. And so this is absolutely critical. And I think we've got regulatory affairs folks working it. We've got, we've got our sales and marketing folks working it. So the conversations are happening. Unfortunately, the position very much is, proprietary data, and it's a battle.
It's that last foothold that the utility gets to hold on to. It's their stake and claim. And it's, again, I found it so interesting. I mean, Brandon and I's first market, because we started together in this industry with ComEd, and we saw the way they did it. We were like, oh, this is great. And we built all this cool stuff. And then when we started learning NEPOOL and NISO, and ERCOT is pretty strong data sharing too, I think, for the most part. But I just was flabbergasted, right? PA, not too bad, right? In Ohio. But then when we went to like Jersey and others, I was just like, man, this is insane. So I did just launch a poll. Thanks, Joe. Curious for the people that are on the phone, how important is this to your end use customers, right? Do they think it's proprietary or not? I'd love your thoughts on that as you guys fill out that poll. We're going to move on, and we're going to we got 5 minutes here to wrap up. It wasn't my plan, but great conversation so far on all these topics. And you've heard of some of these. But let's each take 2 minutes to inform the audience. This is actually, the companies are working on solving these problems. Nobody's sitting around just, throwing out ideas like standardization. That's not going to happen. There's too many market participants, 2,000 brokers and 300 plus suppliers. Standardization in our industry is not going to be a thing, right? Ever, in my opinion. So each of us are going to talk a little bit about what we do. We'll try to keep it brief, 2 minutes. And then, if there's question and answers, please, on anything that we say, our audience, please throw that up there. I'll kick it off and I'll show you how quick I can go here. Enerex, right? This is what we built our entire company around, being a trustworthy company to all of our constituents, both brokers and suppliers. And what we're doing is we've created the exchange. We built 2 software programs, Sparkplug for brokers and Propeller for suppliers. And we knew that not everyone's going to use our software. Like Jeff said, there's too many softwares out there for everybody to consolidate around one. Why did we build 2 systems? Because we wanted to teach brokers and suppliers how to speak via API seamlessly. So whether you use our software or not, if you're a broker, like, Benji knows, I'm after Benji and talking to him about, hey, why don't we just, do something where it's a hub and spoke model. Brokers connect to something once, suppliers connect to something once, and then you can communicate with the others through one set of APIs. Now, what this does, though, it solves 2 problems, which, by the way, I do think this is an important topic, which obviously the hub and spoke model where one connection, right, gets to many, that's one problem it solves. The other one is translation. And this is a problem for the industry. Like Jeff was saying, when Jeff or Brandon has to go to one broker partner and go, okay, let's set up an API communication. What if one calls it ConEd and the other one calls it Connected Edison? That now needs IT to get involved to say, when I receive this value, this is what it means to my systems. So what Exchange does solve is what's called canonicity or translation. We do that translation for all of our customers and all of our all the participants on both sides of this aisle as well. We really focus on solving that and giving the data back to the other folks in the manner that they wanted it. We talk about scrapers versus EDI. Scrapers in every territory that's possible. Push more suppliers to actually have portals where I can go in and get usage. But in those utilities that do it the old school way of EDI, we'll do that too, because the data is so important. And lastly, to address the issues of commissions in the industry, we went and acquired earlier this year a company called Craft by Paraveda. We do commission statement generation for 9 of the retail suppliers out there through this tool. And again, when you think about how to solve this, it's really data in and data out. So if you have the best calculator, which that's what I like to call Craft, the sexiest calculator I've ever seen, that allows you to really add value there. So I am going to go just bounce to Brandon first, and then we'll work our way Benji and Jeff too, and that's how we'll end this up. So Brandon, tell us a little about how Constellation's doing to solve all these problems.
Yeah, again, so we've been on this mission to provide more effortless experience for partners and customers, right? And it, the first thing I'll talk about is this digital hub and API infrastructure. And this is a key strategic initiative that really we launched in 2019. And it was born out of this realization that our existing platforms were antiquated, too cumbersome. They weren't delivering consistent and reliable functions. And so, we kind of did an architectural assessment alongside writing kind of what our vision for the future was and where we saw things evolving with additional products and channels and lines getting blurred even between channels and go-to-market strategies. And what we realized is we needed to rewrite the entire back-end data architecture. And while that's probably not that sexy for this audience, what it enables though is a much more reliable experience and the ability to integrate and develop these self-service capabilities, both for data availability aspects as well as sales, renewal, payment type transactions. It's really the foundation we've been working on for the last couple of years, and we're in the last few weeks of implementation of that. And the next phase is then kind of going out and working through integrations and leveraging what's been built there in order to deliver, in that, I'll call it the traditional energy, landscape, the mass market type, residential, small commercial, fixed rate transactions. We can facilitate all of that digitally and without a lot of the manual data entry, and in a very expedited fashion that it's at the fingertips of the partners for both matrix and custom pricing. When you kind of bounce down to this data as an asset, and that for us has really been a journey that we've been on the last several years, starting from consolidation of systems and governance of our data in a kind of more effective way. It's been kind of a mantra that we've had, and it's not this project, but more of a cultural shift and a commitment that we made. And it was about centralizing, organizing the data in a more effective manner that created greater accessibility, greater transparency, and ultimately allows us to have more agility in how we're delivering capabilities and or new products and services to market, right? We recognize that the landscape's going to change. We were situated in a way that didn't allow us to be really fast to market and agile in delivering those experiences to partners and customers. We've got kind of our infrastructure built in a way that we think is really going to enable accelerated growth in those areas, and partners and customers are going to benefit alike.
Sorry, I just realized I was muted. So as we're kind of bringing this home and Benji's up next, the recording will be available. So some folks do have to drop off, but you obviously should be very interested in what everybody is going to be saying here. Make sure, come in, review the last 5 minutes. If you have to drop, we understand. However, going to continue on for the next 5 minutes. Benji, tell us a little bit about what Box is doing to take care of these issues in retail.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's talking about there's a lot of issues, a lot of problems in the space, and our heart with our business is that we create a home for brokers to come to, and we have an informational hub. We've got a technology. One of the things that we're real big on is that technology is an accelerator. It's not the foundation, it's the accelerator of the foundation, right? That relationships are the foundation. We try to have relationships with our suppliers, relationships with our brokers, but we use the technology as an accelerator to be able to scale your business as a broker, scale your business as a supplier. You can come to Box and, work with thousands of brokers through one, as you call it, a hub, right? You come through this hub, you get access to a lot of different brokers. And that's really, behind the business, Arthur and I, when we started saying, hey, how do we consolidate some things to make things easy for brokers where they're not having to manage, hundreds of different, I shouldn't say hundreds, dozens of different supplier relationships, and vice versa. How can suppliers come to us and not have to manage dozens of different, or in their case, hundreds of different relationship with brokers? And so we wanted to consolidate data, have an informational hub where brokers can come in there and really, have access to, a big business and a lot of resources, but they can still manage their business on a small business basis, right? And so, that was kind of when we started saying, hey, this is a place where you can come both brokers and suppliers and have a place where you have a technology hub. You've got access to a lot of different markets. You can scale your business. Got access to payment structures, different things like that. And then at the core of it, that you've got the back office support, the informational support, and a relationship there where you can kind of feel at home and feel like, hey, I've got some backing here, when I get out in front of my customers and whatnot. So,
I think that's really interesting, Benji, and I've loved seeing Box growing over the years. And some on this call might be like, well, if you're an Enerex customer or a Box customer or something like that, you might be, well, those are at odds with each other, aren't those competitors? And I'll tell the audience, Benji and I have had many conversations. We don't see it that way whatsoever, right? If you're a broker, if you're an agent, or if you're somebody that needs that back office support and you don't want to build all that infrastructure internally, the fee that Box takes is absolutely incredibly fair for the services that they provide to you. Now, if you want to build a practice and you want, to build up an equity position, right, and be able to sell your book of business one day, et cetera, and you already have direct relationships with a lot of these suppliers, well, that's the kind of customers that we serve, right? So we really don't feel like we're at odds with each other at all for the audience. And, there is plenty of brokers that need both services at the end of the day. So just sharing the differences there. We also do have the same vision of retail energy that it can be a lot more efficient. So
no, and with that being said,
please.
We send Jason customers all the time, and Jason sends us.
Yeah, of course.
It sounds like you need to be using,
Right.
So it's good.
It is a great working relationship. And Jeff, bring us home, man. You're doing a ton. So please with Gage.
Great. Well, listen, thank you. It's been a really, really interesting conversation, and seeing some of the polls that are out there. I think everybody has got the same vision on the panel, that we really realize that there's still automation and there's lots of things that need to occur inside of our industry. But when Great American Gas and Electric was formed, we really thought about the transaction, and we really thought about our partners and the number of pieces of information and what are the real pain points that are associated with it. And one of the big pain points is the ease of transaction. We've designed a system internally, and we have our own portal as well, that you can come into and within 5 minutes in a web scrape market, be able to take from entering the customer information, and it can be cut and pasted into our system, going all the way through to a hello sign contract that can be sent out to the customer and then brought back into our system, can all happen within a 5-minute period. It doesn't get any easier. The channel partner doesn't have to enter any data into the system itself outside of what his fee is going to be associated with the transaction. And it all gets tracked and put into a barcoded contract that can be sent out electronically to the customer to get signed, and then brought back into our system electronically as well. So there's no longer filling out a contract. There's no longer trying to figure out where to put the price, what the start, what the end date is. How do I get it downloaded? How do I re-upload it back into my system? How do I send it off to the customer? How do I get it back and upload it back into my system and then send it back off to the retailer again? All of those steps are eliminated. In our system, it's all done automatically. Everything is set up and automatically generated for the channel partner with a click of a button. If he doesn't transact on the first time and wants to do it 3 days later, it's again a simple click of the button, and instead of 5 minutes, it's now 30 seconds. And all of those pieces can be done through our portal itself in all the markets that we are participating in. But we realized that's not for everybody, because as Jason and Benji have realized long ago, people want to have choice and they want to be able to see multiple suppliers at the same time. So we've invested in API technology. And what that really means at a very high level for people that don't understand it is we can talk to other people's systems and be able to send our information and give them the exact same journey that they could see if they came to our portal in somebody else's portal. So if it's Box or if it's an Enerex system and we've already connected through the exchange system already, you can actually start to get the exact same feel and experience that you would have if you came to our portal in their systems as well. So now we've realized that not only do we want to offer it internally, but we also want to give you that value proposition as a channel partner that you have choice and you can see other people's prices and services as well. And then after you finish with the actual sale, we really feel the other key pieces to all of this are making sure you get enough information to be able to, one, service the customer that you've worked so hard to get, but also get paid. And every single contract that we create has a barcode on it that tracks your commission and tracks all of the accounts and customers that are associated with that contract itself, from a start to an end date, to drops, rejections, and the fees that you're supposed to be associated with it. So every month we create a commission report that gives you the account, what the flow was for that month, the volume, what your rate was, what your projected rate was, what your projected volume was. So not only can you see what you thought historically was going to be, but how the customer is performing now in today's marketplace. If the customer changes its status as a rejected, or if it drops or whatever, you're going to get an automated email. And if it's through an API, it'll be an automated API call for you to give you all of that information. So you're getting more information regarding the fees that you're getting paid, what the status of those customers are, and the entire life cycle, all the way up to a renewal, which 90 days before that customer contract comes up, you're going to get sent an automated email as well that's going to not only tell you that the contract's coming up, but what the current prices on that contract are versus what they were when you signed that contract itself. All of those pieces are available today with us from an automated perspective, and they're all working and up and running today. Those are all the things that we've done as an organization that, based off of what your surveys are telling us, are all pain points for you today in the marketplace. And we've come up with creative solutions on how we can help you with that.
So that's awesome. Jeff, thanks so much for telling us a little bit about about Great American Gas and Electric, and really appreciate the panelists for being on today. You know, if there's any Q&As from the audience, please bring them in. Happy to take calls, but so much participation in the polls, which is exactly what I was looking for today. Now, what I think is interesting on these last two polls specifically is that it's a really mixed bag. And there's some, and this is good for the panelists, right? There's a bunch of brokers out there that do feel that their end use customers would feel it is proprietary. We need to understand why, right? That should be a question we're asking to our partners all the time here. And I know my team will take that up as well with ours to make sure that we understand that. I also think this most recent poll that we just took, and look at this, is almost 60% of the people that have participated in this poll are saying that they think API communication is difficult. Well, talk to anybody on this panelist. We are all doing this today. Pre-deal pricing stuff is a lot more prevalent in our industry right now, but we are working on post-deal type of informations. Look at a supplier brand new like Gage that built all their infrastructure from the beginning like this, and look at a supplier as deep as Constellation, who is spending a whole bunch of time, money, and effort, right? And a whole internal project around centralizing that data and being able to communicate to their channel partners that same way. And then you got a platform like Box and Enerex serving different types of customers, connecting all these pieces together for the end user, for our customer, which is that broker, agent, et cetera, that's using the platform. So I hope you guys all know that we are working on this feverishly, and gals on the call, we really enjoy what it is we do here at Enerex and bringing this world together. Thank you to Brandon, Jeff, and Benji for joining the panel today. I really do appreciate all y'all's participation in this for sure. We look forward to having you on another webinar soon. And to close it out from an Enerex perspective, sorry we're 10 minutes over. Every time I do a webinar, I'm always 10 minutes over. We have good conversations. Thanks for sticking with us. We still have over half of our audience that stuck with us past time, so thank you. But I'll end with this. If you got your smartphone camera out, go ahead and snap a picture of this QR code. Our next webinar will be the last Thursday in September on the 30th with DNVGL. We're going to be talking about things like what are average broker margins that were reported. We're going to be talking about things like who ranked best in terms of pricing, competitiveness. And DNVGL has surveyed over 1,000 brokers on this. There's a bunch of surveys in our industry. DNVGL had reached out and said, hey, we'd love to share this through your audience. And we said, absolutely, we think it's a great topic. So look forward to everybody joining for that one. And with that, I will wrap up by saying thank you. Appreciate all the participation. Let's continue to make this industry a better place for all of us to work and keep our jobs for the next 20 to 30 years, push away these regulators and make sure they understand we're all in it. We're just young, we're teenagers, and we got to grow up. So thanks.